أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحابه ومن اهتدى بهداهم إلى يوم الدين. فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. ربي لا تؤاخذني مما يقولون واغفر لي ما لا يعلمون واجعل لي خيرا مما يظنون. Ahmad. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome one more time to the House of Dua, and welcome to this special edition designed to escort ourselves from the point of death to the point of eternity. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, as you are already aware, by the process of procreation decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after the intercourse between a man and a woman, the man deposits some semen into the woman. And by the mercy of Allah, conception starts from there. 40 days after that deposition, it turns to blood. And after 40 days again, it turns to clot of blood or tissue. And thereafter, another 40 days, bones and flesh are added, and the soul is brought into the baby. And the journey through life begins from there. But later on, there is the time for exit. Death takes place. And when we die, we proceed in our journey towards meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the belief in Islam. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, I'd like to begin this conversation with a question. Have you lost any member of your family of recent? Your parents, brothers and sisters, uncles and aunties, nieces and nephews, cousins, or a friend, or a workmate? I'm sure many of us will say, yes. And if I say, have you ever lost any member of your family or close friends? Most of us will definitely say yes. But if I follow up with another question, since they are passing, where do you think they are? Where have they gone to? Many of us are likely not to have an answer to that. That's why today we want to share with you the journey from death to eternity, how it looks like. How can we find a suitable explanation for this? The scientists cannot tell you what happens after death. There's no babalawo, no magician, no soothsayer can tell you what happens after death. The only true source of knowledge for what happens after death is in the Quran and the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. So we as Muslims, we are very fortunate to have this body of knowledge. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, without doubt, people are dying. Parents, brothers and sisters, aunties and uncles, cousins, nieces and nephews, other relations, even friends, and even non-Muslims. People are dying. But the question is, after death, where do you go? The case of the non-Muslims is very simple. They declare, in here, hayatuna dunya and namutu wa nahya. This life is the start all and end all. We live here and die here and waste away. That's their belief. But that's not the belief of us in Islam. As far as we are concerned, life is a continuum. The journey that started from conception is designed, decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to work towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until he meets Allah on the day of accountability. In Surah Shikak, Allah says, Naka kadi on ila rabbika kadiha famulaki. You are on a journey, one step after another, one stage after another. A journey towards meeting your Lord, and definitely you will meet your Lord. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, if we truly know what happens after death, many of us would not need further education to sit up right now and prepare for what happens. Because it could be horrible for some people, but it could be very exciting and pleasurable for others. We ask Allah to count us among those who enjoy the pleasure and honor of life after death. My dear brothers and dear sisters, before we go into the issue of life after death, it's important for us to understand the relationship between the two most important parts of us. As human beings, we are of two parts, the body and the soul. The body is for this dunya. The soul is also here, but not in explicit way. It is in a secondary position in the world we live, but the body is in primary position. That's why whatever we do in this life, it is the body that takes the heat, the pains, the pleasures, the ups and downs, the emotions. Is the body that feels it. Even though the soul also experiences it within the body. But without the soul, the body cannot be able to function. What do we know about the soul? Very little. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Isra, Yas'alunaka anni Kulli ruhun min amri rabbi wa ma utitu min al-ilmi illa qalila. They ask you about the soul, Ya Muhammad, tell them, the soul is the command of my Lord. And nothing of it is given to you as far as knowledge is concerned, except very little. That's why the doctors don't know what happens to the soul after somebody has died. As I said, it is the body that is of primary importance in the life we live. But when it comes to our transition to Akhirah, as soon as a human being dies, then the soul takes over. The soul is now the primary functionality of ourself. Just as the body receives the heat here, the pains, the vicissitudes of life, so the soul will now begin to receive the heat of what we are going to encounter in the Akhirah. The pains, the pleasures, if any, and of course, the changes from one stage to another. Let's liken this to the dream that we have when we are alive, which Allah has used as a reference point to remind us of the relationship between our life, the body, and the soul. When you sleep and you dream, sometimes you find yourself eating or drowning or counting money in the bank or doing something else. Who is experiencing those activities? The soul. The body does not know about it. That's why even when the person is sleeping with you, he doesn't know what you are going through. The body is just there. But the body feels it in the secondary level. That's why when you wake up, you don't see any manifestations of all those things that you saw while you were in sleep. Because it was the soul that was active. And that's one of what Allah says, when we go to bed, it takes our soul. The soul continues to be active. If it pleases Allah, it brings the soul back to us. Otherwise, it could withhold it. And we say that person is dead. When we pass away, therefore, it is the soul that continues the life towards meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The body is deposited in the grave and decomposition begins. Because the body belongs to this earthly world, it does not belong to Akhirah. But that does not mean that the person will not be called to accountability. So when your relation dies, you think that's the end of it? That's not the end of it. Actually, that your relation has transited into a different arena where he or she is going to continue a process that is easy if he's a believer, or a process that is very difficult if he's a non-believer. So that's why the responsibility we owe to those who pass away is enormous. for us to continue to keep them in our dua. In the hadith narrated by Usman ibn Affan, he said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after burying anyone, he will tell the people, "Fastaghfiru li akhikum." All of you should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive your brother, because that forgiveness is necessary. That's why when somebody dies, we say, Allahumma fi lahum wa rahmahum wa afu anhum wa afihi wa adkhilhum jannata bighairi hisab. Or Allahumma fi laha wa rahmha wa afu anha wa afiha wa adkhilhum jannata bighairi hisab. That's the best dua we can make for those who have passed away. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, when a person leaves this planet through death, where has the person gone to? He goes into a place or through a period known as the Barazakh. That is the period between the exit of that person until that person meets Allah on the day of accountability. What takes place at that time is a lot. And that journey actually is longer than the journey one spends on this planet. That's why we need to prepare for it. There are people who have been in the Barazakh for the past 1 million or plus years. There are people who have just arrived there. Allah is not in a hurry. We don't know when the day of accountability is coming. Only Himself knows. But definitely, it will come. And it's going to come back to time. It's going to come suddenly. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, people are passing away, either through sickness, or through accident, or through the fighting that is going all over the world nowadays, killing of innocent people through bombs and guns and missiles and so on, or through natural disasters such as earthquake, hurricane, tornado, and so on. But just as people are leaving this planet to the akhirah, so people are just arriving on this planet through deliveries. So Allah has a way of proportionately controlling this planet with life and death. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, our concern today is what happens after death. As I said, after death, the human being transits into a place or a period known as the Barazakh, a kind of way station at the middle of nowhere, between dunya and akhirah. You cannot pinpoint where Barazakh is. Is it in the heaven or in the earth? We have no idea. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. But that's where the soul of those who have passed away transit to and begin a process of accountability. A journey towards meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As I said, that journey could be very pleasurable for those who now do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks them to do. But it could be very difficult and agonizing. It could be an anguish for those who disbelieve in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which of these parties do you want to belong? And as I said also, there's nowhere else you can find any knowledge about what happens in the Barazakh except in the Quran and the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in the Quran, Surah Anbiya, وَمَا جَعَلْنَا لِبَشَرٍ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ الْخُلُودَ أَفَإِن مِّتَّ فَهُمُ الْخَالِدُونَ كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ وَنَبْلُوكُم بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ فِتْنَةً وَإِلَيْنَا تُرْجَعُونَ. There are several other verses like that in the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I have not created any man to live on this planet forever. Ya Muhammad, those who are laughing at you because your relations have passed away, if you were to die, will they themselves remain behind? The answer is no. Everyone is going to die and go back to Allah. Every soul must taste the dish of death. Thereafter, go back to Allah for accountability. But before then, Allah will continue to test us with that which is good and which is bad, to see whether we'll be able to change our way for that which is good. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, there are several hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam when it comes to life in the Barazakh. We can list up to 15 to 20 major stages that the soul will go through after death. In the hadith narrated by Al-Bara ibn Azib and Anas bin Malik, the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam told us that the most critical of these stages that man goes through after death is what happens in the grave. as soon as a person dies, according to the hadith, 2 angels are sent down to question that person. Ma'rebuk, or Nabiyuk, or Ma'dinuk. Who was your Lord? Who was your prophet that you follow? And what deen did you follow? If he's a believer, he will reply so easily. Allah already, Muhammadun already, or Islam already. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, as far as the believer is concerned, when these questions are posed to him, he will have no fear. Yusabitullah ulazina amanu bilikawli thabiti fil hayati dunya. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will strengthen his heart, as he has already stated in the Quran. With the word of Allah, the heart of those who believe in Allah will be strengthened. As soon as he's able to answer those questions, a voice will usher from heaven, saying, my true slave has said the truth. Therefore, open the door of Jannah for that person. The doors of heaven will be open. The breeze from heaven will be blowing towards that person, and the close of heaven will be given to that person to wear. On the other hand, if the person is a disbeliever and he asks those questions, he will continue to say, ha, 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 la aderi, la aderi, la aderi. I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. Then he's suffering or her suffering will begin from there, and the angels will begin to punish him. Many things will happen at that moment. The grave will tighten up. The doors of hell will be open for that person, and the wind from hell will be blowing towards that person. The clothes of hell will be given to that person to wear. In the hadith narrated by Anas bin Malik, the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, within that period, as soon as a person is buried and those who brought him there are going away, he is able to hear the footsteps of those people. Unfortunately, he couldn't speak to them because he's already now in the Barazakh. And between the Barazakh and Dunya, there's a barrier that cannot be crossed. This is a very, very important part of our transition to Akhir. How do you want your situation to be when you are in the grave? This is the time for you to prepare for that. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, whenever we talk about questioning in the grave, most people think of it as if the body and the soul are still in the grave together, as if they are in physical form, and the angel will come around and say, stand up and receive your questions. That's not how it is. As soon as somebody is buried, the soul is separated from the body. It is the soul that receives questioning. That is why it's important for us to know that when a person dies, there are those who die and are not buried immediately. There are those who die and their body is not even found for burial. There are those who die and they are cremated or dissolved into water or disposed of in any other way. How do such people receive questioning at the grave? The fact is that in whatever form you die, your soul is subject to questioning by Allah in a manner deemed fit by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You may die in America and your soul is questioned in Nigeria. Allah will take your soul to a particular spot on the planet where it will be questioned. It may not necessarily be right there where you are buried and you are inside that grave over there. This is a questioning that is inevitable and it can take place anywhere and in any manner, being fit by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Take the case of the angels that come to question. They are not in physical form. There is no door to be opened in order to enter the grave. No. But they will meet the soul wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants them to meet that soul for questioning. So questioning is one of the things that take place immediately after death. Whether you are burnt into ashes or you dissolve in water or your body is not found at all, you still will go through that questioning in a manner that Allah has determined. After the experience in the grave, the soul will continue its journey. And it will go through several other steps before finally it will meet Allah on the day of accountability. One of those first steps that the soul will go through is what is known as the last day, the day of judgment. The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam was worried about this day. And Aisha radiallahu anha asked him, Ya Rasulullah, why are you so worried? He said, why will I not be worried when I am aware that Israfil alayhi salam, the angel in charge of trumpet, is already holding the trumpet in his mouth. waiting for the command of Allah to blow it so that the world will come to an end. A sensible person should be worried about that. That day is coming, the day of accountability. The day that no soul can help any soul. Many metaphoric descriptions of that day. Yawm al-Qiyam, Yawm al-Din, Yawm la yanfa'u malun wala banun illa man ata Allah bi qalbin salim. Yawma yaqumu an-nasu li rabbil alamin. It's going to be a difficult day for some people, but it's going to be easy for those who obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam had advised us to be careful and prepare now for what will happen on the day of accountability. What about your relation who has passed away? What do you think is going through right now? What about you when it comes to your turn? What will you go through? And the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam says, if you truly want to know what will happen on the day of accountability, then read Surah At-Takwir, where Allah says that Shamsu Kuwirat, or Surah Infitar, Iza Sama Fatarat, Wazal Kawakibu Tatharat, Wazal Biharu Fujirat, Wazal Kuburu Bu'thirat, or read Surah Inshikak, Iza Sama Shakat, Wazinat, Lerabiha, Waukat. Or go ahead and read Surah Al-Zalzal, Yauma Tuhadisu Akbaraha, the day when the earth will expose that which happened to her. How all of us use her, earth will explain that day. And dear brothers and dear sisters, the Prophet said that is not an easy day for anyone. Therefore, it's important for us to prepare for it. When somebody dies, these are the things you need to think about. Not how to share property or do things that are prohibited in Islam. May Allah forgive our sins. Another stage in the journey towards meeting Allah is the day we are going to appear before Allah. After resurrection, everybody will appear before Allah. And the Prophet says, there shall be no intermediary. That's the day Allah will speak to all of us directly. And Allah will ask the question, who is the king of today? And he will reply, Allah is the king of today. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, it's not going to be easy for those who are neglectful now of the commandment of Allah. But it will be easy for you, it will be easy for me by the mercy of Allah because we follow the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on that day of accountability, when we shall meet Allah, it's going to be a very difficult day. A day when you will not be given an opportunity to speak with your mouth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Fusilat, Shahida alayhi sam'uhum wa absaruhum wa juluduhum wa qalu li juludihim lima shahiditu alayna qalu atakana Allahu alladhi ataka kulla shay wa huwa khalaqakum awwala marra wa ilayhi turja'un. It's a day when Allah will permit the ears, the mouth, as well as your body entirely to speak against you, to bear witness against you. And you as a soul will ask your body, why are you testifying against me? And your body parts will reply, Allah who created you in the first instance had granted us permission to speak today. It's not our fault. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, think about that. When your father or your mother pass away, think about what is going to go through. And sit down and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive your parents. Another thing that is going to take place before we meet Allah on the day of accountability is the giving of rights that are due to every person. Those of you who have wronged people today, on the day of accountability, you will be made to pay that right to the person you have taken his right. Aisha radiallahu anha narrated a powerful hadith in which the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, a man came to him and told the Prophet, Ya Rasulallah, I used to have slaves who worked for me. And some of them used to steal my property. I used to punish them. I used to do all kinds of things. But how is Allah going to judge us on the day of accountability? The Prophet told him, the day of accountability is a day that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall establish the scale of measure of judgment. If the people you punish them right, of course there will be no problem. Otherwise, they will be made to seek retribution against you. Wonadi umawazi na kistali yawm al-qiyamah fala tu'lamu nafsun shay'an. وَإِنْ مِثْقَالَ حَبَّةٍ مِنْ خَرْدَلٍ أَتَيْنَا بِهَا وَكَفَى بِنَا حَاسِبِينَ. That's from Surah Anbiya. On that day, the scale of judgment will be established. And no matter what you did, No matter how small or big it may be, Allah says we shall account for it. Therefore, be ready for that day. Another thing that will happen the day of accountability is it's not going to be a day for those who are lazy, even as Muslims. On that day, those who are able to make sacrifice, waking up in the night to get close to Allah, they will have opportunity that day to go to Jannah without hisab kitab. They are the people تتجافى جنوبهم عن المضاجع يدعون ربهم خوفا وطمعا ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. Those who forsake their beds at night, seeking the pleasure of Allah, hopeful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward them. And in addition to that, they spend the little they have in the way of Allah. Those are the ones on the day of accountability will not have any hisab kitab. There will be no accountability for them. They will be given Jannah. You want to belong to that group? Then work hard right now. The next stage that we're going to go through is intercession. On that day, after rising from the grave, it will be so confusing that everybody will be scared. The first thing that will happen to people on that day after the blowing of the trumpet is fear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described this in Surah Zumar. Allah says, as soon as the trumpet is sounded, those who were buried will rise from their grave and they will be overtaken by fear. That's when you hear people say, Nefsi, Nefsi, my soul, my soul, my soul, my soul. Each person looking for a way out. On that day, intercession will be given to the Holy Prophet Muhammad. Sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. There are people who will also be allowed to intercede, like the Anbiya of Allah, like the righteous people. They will be given opportunity to intercede for their people at that day. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, under Ayatul Kursi, who is the one that can intercede for anybody on the day of accountability, except by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even though the Anbiya of Allah may like to intercede, or righteous people may like to intercede for their people, or even children who die early in age would like to intercede for their parents, those intercessions will not work unless it's permitted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On that day, every generation will meet its prophet for intercession. But those prophets will continue to refer them to Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, Abdalul Khaliki wa Akramul Rusul, because he has the power of intercession. But you know who have the power to grant intercession? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As of today, the one who is designated with the right to intercede for people on the day of accountability is Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Are you ready for that intercession? Are you working hard right now? Do you think your parents who have passed away, your brothers and sisters, are qualified for that intercession? Anas bin Malik told the Prophet, he was the houseboy to the Prophet, Ya Rasulallah, I know you are the only one who will have power of intercession on the day of accountability. Will you intercede for me? The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam told Anas, yes, if you need intercession, I will grant you intercession. Then Anas asked the Prophet, where will I meet you for my intercession? He said, you will meet me in any of the following three places. At the Sirat, that is the bridge that runs through the hellfire. It is the deeds you do now that will determine whether you'll be able to pass through that bridge very well. Otherwise, once you fall into hellfire. At that time, people will need the intercession of the Prophet. The second location is at the time of weighing of deeds. And the deeds you do now are weighed, subjected to scale. There are people, even who are Muslims, because of their deeds, they will first of all be taken to hellfire before they will now be removed to go to Jannah, following the intercession of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. At the time of weighing, you will name the Prophet at that time. So also by the pond of the Kawthar. The Kawthar is the pond or a lake or a river flowing across Jannah that Allah has promised Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. It's called the heart. It's like milk, but purer than milk. And only those who are qualified for the Prophet's intercession will be allowed to drink from that pond of life that day. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, do you think you are qualified for it? You have to work hard right now. Do you know whether your parents who have passed away will be entitled to that intercession? That's why you need to make dua for them. Our responsibility as those who are living is to pray for those who have passed away. That's why we ask Allah, Rabbana filana leki walina lazina sabakuna bil iman. ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. Another thing that will happen before eternity, everlastingness, is finally the time for judgment. Once judgment is made, those who will go to Jannah will go to Jannah. Those who will go to hell will go to hell and start everlasting suffering in hell or everlasting happiness in Jannah. May Allah count us among those who will go to Jannah. For those of us who will go to Jannah, it is good news. As soon as judgment is passed and we are taken to Jannah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come to appear before his slaves. And we ask the question, Ya Ibadi, O my true slaves, are you all happy for what you have seen? We shall reply, Ya Allah, why not? We are happy. So adakana wada wa olathana aradana tabawa min jannati haythu nasha wa ni'ma ajrul amilin. You have fulfilled the promise for us, Ya Allah. Look at Jannah. What else can we wish for? Then we ask the question, did you see me when you were in dunya? We didn't see you, Ya Allah. Won't you like to see me? Yes, Ya Allah. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَى وَزِيَادَةٌ. For those who do good now, they will be given good on the day of accountability and an increase. That increase is our seeing Allah on the day of accountability. Once Allah has commanded that the veil be removed for us to cast a glance at him, the Prophet says we shall look at Allah like somebody looking at one thing for up to 500 years without removing his eyes. That's how amazing it is. My dear brothers, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will finally declare, today, in Rahmati, Galabeti Gadebi, my mercy has overcome my anger. Today, La azkhatu alaykum abada ba'da haza. I will never be angry with any of you after today. Enjoy yourself. And this is the beginning of eternity for those who will enter Jannah. But for those who will enter hell, they will not have opportunity to see Allah. They will be taken to hell. Fakubati wujuhum finnar. They will be walked on their faces down and thrown into hell. And that is the reward they earn for the life they live in this world. So you see that the journey through Barazakh is not going to be an easy journey for those who have passed away until they meet Allah on the day of accountability for judgment. It's up to you whether you want to earn the favor of Allah or you want to earn the anger of Allah. In the world we live now, Allah has given you the opportunity. Your soul is of two parts. Ujuraha, utakwaha. There is sinfulness part of your soul. There is the righteousness part of your soul. It's up to you what you want to use your soul to do. Kadaflaha man zakaha, or karikaba man dasaha. Those who allow their soul to rot, they have lost it. But those who purify their soul, they are the ones who will be successful on the day of accountability. We ask Allah to count us among them on the day of accountability. Rabbana tabamina innaka anta sami'un alim wa tub alayna ya maulana innaka antal ghafurul karim. All those who have passed away recently or passed away a long time ago, Ya Allah, who are members of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, grant them Jannatul Firdaus. When it's our turn to join them, Ya Allah, make it easy for us to transit to Akhirah with goodness. Grant us husnul khatima, Ya Allah. Subhanallah wa bihamdi, subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.